thank you. Thank you all for making the trip. People have come from all over the province, and especially, I was told not to single out my long-suffering in-laws, but when this descended on a farm in Fair Valley, Ontario, some 35 years ago, they were wonderfully patient. My beloved in-laws, Bruce and Brenda Gossard, sitting back there, I love them dearly, so thank you for welcoming me. And I'm so grateful that the Christian farmers of Ontario came, Pioneer Camp crew came, and people came from all over. My colleagues from Caldwell, Securities made the trip up. A couple of us have nosebleeds coming this month. So how does one begin a talk like this? Well, hello, I'm Brendan. I was wondering how many were part of 12-step programs. See where we go. And it is true. God did play 3 jokes on me that I am aware of, at least. The first, I went to an all-boys school from the time I was 8. I had one younger brother growing up. I went to Pioneer Boys Camp. And God thought it'd be funny to give me 3 daughters. The young lady in the back there, girls are wonderful. I have no doubt my daughters will look after me when I'm old, but I just don't understand them. In His mercy, God did give me 1 boy so that I can go to movies where stuff gets blown up. Second joke is that he did, as we mentioned, marry me off to a woman whose family has lived on the farm called Purbrook in Fair Valley for the last almost 200 years. It'll be a 2nd century farm sometime in the next decade. That's been amazing. And he also sent me out to the highways and byways of Ontario to look after farmers. We looked after a number of farm mutual insurance companies. We helped to build the largest cooperatively owned ethanol plant in Canada. I know what vomitoxin does to ethanol production. Dressed like this, I should not know that. But I do. And so it's been an interesting journey. What's the best? So I'm gonna start in the middle. I'm gonna work to the beginning and then come to the end. What's the best eulogy you ever heard? What's the best eulogy you ever heard? They're really hard to do. I had to do a few of them myself for friends. Best eulogy I ever heard was from a Catholic priest, Monsignor Sam Bianco of Corpus Christi Catholic Church in the East End of Toronto. He was giving a eulogy for the son of a friend of mine. The boy's name was Edgar. Edgar passed away the day he was born. And Father Bianco said, you must not ever believe that God's eternal purpose for Edgar has been thwarted by his early departure from this life. That God has an eternal purpose for this boy, Edgar. And, those of us who lived 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, you sometimes wonder, what's all that? Do I have a purpose? Why am I here? And it was wonderfully reassuring to hear from the priest what, if I thought about it, of course it's true. Because God is either gone or He isn't. God has an eternal purpose for Edgar that will last beyond the sun and the moon and the stars. There is a reason that Edgar was in this world, however briefly. It's true, I do enjoy that song, Draw the Circle Line. If I had one issue that I was passionate about, since the time of Jesus, we've drawn the circle wider in the West. It used to be, a couple thousand years ago, to be a full-fledged human being, you had to be an upper-class Roman male, above a certain age, with some money. Otherwise, if you're a foreigner, a slave, a woman, a child, you were not a person. And for 2,000 years, possibly starting check with this conversation he had with the woman at the well, Jesus initiated a process to draw the circle wider and wider and wider still. And the only group that we don't as a society yet incorporate into this circle is children that have yet to be born. But as we heard from our scriptures today, God has an eternal purpose for those children. God has an eternal purpose for each of us. So, how do you know what God's purpose is for you? I don't know what it is for you, but for me it's been this. If there's something that won't let go of my heart, that just won't stop bothering me, it's going to keep bothering me until I do something about it. But what do I do about it? And when and how and where and what? It's true, I do love the poetry of John Milton. He has a brilliant sonnet that he wrote. Sonnets were, before Milton's time, love poetry. They still are, but he wrote his sonnets about purpose. And he was a little younger than I am now. He was blind. He was in prison. Everything he'd ever fought for his entire life was taken from him. And he was the smartest man in England, if not in Europe, in his lifetime. And yet he hadn't felt he'd accomplished anything. And he wrote a poem about how, great line, that does God exact day labor light denied? I'm blind, what am I supposed to do about it, he says. And then he concludes the poem with this: they also serve lonely, stand and wait. If there's a purpose, if there's a call on my life, I feel that God will make it into being. The tricky part for me, and I only learned this probably in my 40s, and I'm still very much a work in progress on this one. Whatever dream, whatever idea, whatever thing I'm really passionate about, am I willing to give it back to God? Am I willing to, I've been given this dream, this idea, this thing, and am I willing to give it back to God so that He can do with it what He will? And that's been a tricky thing. Our ultrasound studio, Tiny Hearts, I've been battling for the last couple of years to try and get it turned into a charity. We don't give counseling, our idea was this when we created it. There's been a lot of anger, a lot of rancor, a lot of fighting about the right to life. And again, it took me to well into my middle age to get it. As a man, I've always felt I've had control over my own body. I don't know what it's like to not feel in control. I understand half the population doesn't always feel in control of their own body, and an unexpectedly expectant mother doesn't feel that she's in control. And so when we founded Tiny Heart, in our society we're used to, if there's a strong and there's a weak, we empower the weak to bring them up, to raise them up. But in this circumstance where you have an unexpectedly expectant mom, you have two vulnerable parties. You have the expectant mother and her child. Both parties are vulnerable. And we have found that a lot of women are under a lot of pressure from external sources. Those that would have liked to have kept their babies are under a lot of pressure from boyfriends and fathers and even husbands to get rid of them. So we thought when we created Tiny Hearts we'd do two things. We provide happy, supportive couples with wonderful pictures of their babies before they're born. And we do that. Because again, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of anger, and I'm not going to argue anybody into believing what I believe. I'm not qualified. But if I said to you guys, policeman, school boy, grocery store clerk, Barrie lawyer,
In that order?
I would have had a few more things in between. A picture would pop into your mind of what those people look like. But if I said to most people unborn baby or fetus, no picture appears. And the grainy pictures that you see on the medical ultrasound don't really do it. It's grainy. So Tiny Hearts provides really crystal clear pictures of what babies look like before they're born. So our thought was that happy supportive couples would go in and have this wonderful experience. They bond with the child, and some moms have a hard time bonding with this baby growing inside them. And the light would go on, and this is a baby. They now see what it would look like. Our other thought was that mothers that are on the cusp of making a choice would see the baby, and they'd see a baby, and everything would click in, and this would be something they want to protect. And we do some of those things. That happens. But what we actually found is that we get mothers a little later in pregnancy, a little later than you'd normally make a choice, but they're under a lot of pressure from the world around them, people in their lives, to get rid of the kid. And what Tiny Hearts manages to do is strengthen the resolve, the decision the expected mother has made by allowing her to see a picture of her baby, and not to put too fine a point on it, show everybody else a picture of her baby. So it's not this amorphous blob of fetal matter, it's a baby. It is what the psalmist described, that something being created in the inmost being, knit together in their mother's womb. So we've done those things, and I'm in the throes of trying to get it turned into a charity, which, as I say, is a pretty hard thing to do in Canada right now. The other thing we've done, and this I hadn't expected. There are babies that aren't going to live to see the light of day. There are things that just go wrong in pregnancy, and the child doesn't make it. And doctors have referred their patients to us when they know that that's the case, because we're the only pictures that the parents are ever going to see of their baby alive. And I have dear, close friends in England who tried for years to have a baby. They at one point got to 5 months with a set of twins and lost them both. Christopher and Jonathan, their names. And when they lost them, I flew over to England. I mean, these friends of mine are very good Christians, and as you know, in this room, Christians are the worst. Well, we are. I mean, come on, Nathaniel here? Can anything good come out of Toronto? I mean, Nazareth? No, the comparison was only meant as a statistic. Very likely. But when something happens like that, we say things like, this will really help you in ministry to others. That's the single least helpful thing you can say to someone who's gone through tragedy. But when I told him, this was years later, what Father Bianco had said about Edgar, that's when the light went on. The idea that in God's economy, nothing is lost, nothing is wasted, everything has a purpose, that Christopher and Jonathan, their life had meaning, has eternal purpose, and will continue to have meaning. And we named the actual room, the actual studio, Tiny Hearts after Christian and Jonathan, just because. To be able to give parents the opportunities to see their children before they're born. And I draw the circle a little wider. The only pictures that my friend Paul and his family have of Edgar are the ones that our studio took. Now my friends in England, they couldn't have kids on their own. So they finally, fairly late in life, decided to adopt. And they went to an adoption class and
somewhere in southeast London. And the adoption class fellow said, "Now, I want you to write down on a little bit of paper all the things you value in your child, all the things you like to see, all the things you think are important." Have you done that? All right. If you take that, you pump the little ball and throw it into the rubbish bin, because that's not what you're going to get. I've spent a lot of my life working with children in one form or other, young people. And we had four of our own. My wife Sandra and I had four of our own, which is, as many of you know, as many you can have and still legally be a Protestant. Maybe that's because I met God very young. My family wasn't Christian, weren't Christians. If anything, I think my father would have described himself as openly hostile to faith. But with my younger brother, who was and remains a handful, and my mother was overwhelmed. And I see from the reaction, some of you know my brother. So they had a young au pair come and live with us, and while they didn't know what they did at Ontario Bible College, which is now called Tyndale, they didn't know what they did at Ontario Bible College. They knew, or at least thought they knew, what they didn't do at Bible College, so they figured this young woman, Anne, would be a safe bet. And she was in a way, but not in another, because she really was like, my father describes it like a light coming on in our house, and I was maybe 4 when she described to me about asking Jesus into my heart. And I did. I knelt down on the orange couch in my brother's room and asked Jesus into my heart. Yeah, it's made all the difference. I don't have a road to Damascus story. I was once horrible and like this. Probably still a little horrible. But see Christians as described above. But I think about what life would have been like if I hadn't met Jesus so young. It's extra biblical. It's not actually in the Bible, but I heard a great philosopher named Ratty from Wind in the Willows opine that there is nothing in life so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. And much of my life is messing about in boats. I have for the last 17 years, my old age. My good friend Calvin Bennett, when at 37, I said, I had to come back and start leading trips. Calvin was the overall director at Pioneer Camp. He said, "Oh, Brendan, well, if you do that, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do these qualifications." And I think he was really, really hoping that the middle-aged man would not come back. But I did all the qualifications, and I came back and led canoe trips for the next 17 or 18 years in my old age. And part of the reason I did it is this program Pioneer has, this leader training program. I really love the moment when the lights go on with the teenagers, 15, 16, 17, that they're actually in charge of other people, because we give them a chance to run the trip itself. And we do similar routes. We do, hopefully we'll do the French River again, Calvin. But it's not about the route, it's about the fact I get to see the same trip, the same adventure through fresh eyes. And that's been the beauty for me of working with young people, is that all the things I thought were important and cool and valuable, all the things I see in God, they're seeing for the first time. It's the same with Sunday school. I'd asked them to read this Nathaniel passage. For one, to remind us all exactly how ornery even the very first apostles were. So if you have difficulty with people in your church, remember this is our origin story. But I never prepare a Sunday school class. I always like to go in with whatever they want to do. And they almost always say, I don't know, typical teenage answer, I don't know. But there'll usually be something, and I have a boy in my class named Nate. So, and there's Paul, and different names of the kids. So where they have a biblical name like this, and Nate is very much like this Nathaniel story. And the funny thing, the thing I find about it is Philip and Nathaniel and Andrew and Peter all thought they were looking for God. This is the one Moses wrote in the law about the one the prophets wrote, the one we've been looking for all these years. And as so often is the case, Jesus just turns it all on its head. You were looking for me. I was looking for you. I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you. We think we spend our whole lives looking for God. In my experience, it's just a question of whether I'm willing to be found. So Nathaniel was willing to be found. So John Milton is famous for writing this poem, Paradise Lost, which is about the creation of the world and the fall and redemption. And the only thing Adam does right in the whole story of the fall is he allows himself to be found. Adam, where are you? I'm here. He allows himself to be found. And in my, about 12 years ago, I joined a program for families of loved ones who have alcohol issues in their lives, and called Al-Anon. And I mentioned that I knew God from a very young age. God was my buddy. I would pray to God. I was a terrible hockey player. I really was. One of my colleagues later in life described me as a good house league hockey player. He did not mean it as a compliment. My brother said that he was being terribly unfair. I was never a good house league hockey player. I was 8 years old, and it was the finals, and we were overmatched, and I prayed that we'd win, and I prayed that we'd score the first goal. Well, I'd score my first goal, and we did win, and I did get my first goal, and, so God was my buddy. But it came to me that I really hadn't trusted God with very much. I hadn't trusted Him with my children, especially. I thought I was going to be the best parent there ever was. I've done so much with so many other people's kids. But only in time did it occur to me, really occurred to me, that God loves my children far more than I do. He loved them first. He loved them before I knew them. He has an eternal purpose in their lives. So I do take to heart my friend's adoption counselor. Write down it all on a bit of paper, throw it in a rubbish bin. It's not what you're going to get. Because I realized that my hurts and disappointments in life are not other people, not my family members, not my friends, not my colleagues. They are the fact I had different expectations. I had different thoughts about how things ought to be. And I never really articulated them to myself, let alone to the other person, including and especially my kids. So I have tried to be mindful of what my expectations are and how they might be very, very different than God's plan for them, for the other people. And that I need to give all the relationships in my life back to God. Slightly older children, interns. We take a lot of interns. This is not an invitation to send me all of your college-age kids. We can only take so many. And as one of my colleagues pointed out, it does give the whole office sort of locker room frat house bouquet for 3 months during the summer. But I tell our interns, and it's, see, I thought my generation had to deal with competition. I'm 55, which I would say makes me middle-aged. Maybe in this group it does. Sorry, that was unnecessary. I'm middle-aged, we're going to 110. But in 1970, fewer kids were born in this country than any year before since. It was the bottom of the baby bus. I didn't compete with anybody. All the infrastructure that was built for the baby boom, I got to enjoy. It was tremendous overcapacity on every stage of my life going through. I wasn't competing. So this generation coming through, there's a lot more of them. And it's good that they're opening a new school, a new university, and I'm glad to hear that things are expanding here in Barrie, because I hear from colleges and universities it's become increasingly challenging with all the immigration changes that happened there. But this generation, if you watch any of the John Hughes movies, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Breakfast Club, you would have thought my generation would be worse off than our parents. It didn't work out that way. My concern for this present generation is they actually feel that way. They actually feel that there's no possibility that they're going to do as well as their parents. So what do I tell our interns? Write down every single disadvantage you think you have. Personally, generationally, everything. Just everything you think is holding you back. And I don't do it, and maybe I'll change it up next year, but I don't do it with a particular spiritual spin on it. I tell them to then write down on the other side of the bit of paper why that thing can actually be an advantage for you. And as I was thinking about this talk, God can use our advantages. He can use anything. But it's really our disadvantages that he really loves to use. So Jeremiah there, I'm too young. And Moses, I can't speak. The disciples were uneducated. Nathaniel was an anti-Nazarethite, something. They all had tremendous disadvantages. And that's the fact that they have the disadvantages is what brings God the glory. Again, I think it's my story. I think I'm looking for God. But God is looking for me. Am I willing to give up even my weaknesses, my brokenness, my disadvantages? I haven't learned very much from my successes. Because when I have successes, it's far too easy for me to say, look at me. It's my brokenness, my disadvantages, my things I don't do well. That's the thing God really loves to use. So, so that's what I talk to my interns about. And the reason I have interns, the reason I take people sailing, the reason I take young people on canoe trips, is so I can see, the reason I do the Bible studies, the Sunday schools, is so I can see the world through fresh eyes, through their eyes. I've talked about a few things. I've talked about God's purpose, about giving my dreams back to God. I've talked about Edgar. I've talked about young people in general. But there's one miracle that happened this year that you wonder why. Babies that should live don't, and babies that should not make it live. So a week ago Sunday, I stood Godfather for the 8th time. I am the Godfather. I look at the door there. was godfather to a little boy named William. William was born in January. He was supposed to be born in May. He was 4 months premature. They hung his poor mother upside down by her heels. I only exaggerate slightly, for about 2 weeks, just so she could get to 22 weeks. And when he and his twin brother Richard were born in January, they were less than a pound each. They should not have made it. But we prayed. We gave them to God. And I stood godfather, and they are the happiest too. I've never seen children that young just so happy to be alive. Just, it's like they know that they're a miracle, that they shouldn't be here, but they're here. And I cried the whole day. It was a whole day event. As the parents were themselves were so grateful. And you do wonder what God is doing sometimes. Why does Edgar pass and William and Richard live? What is God thinking? Why have people close to us passed away, and why are we still here? What is my purpose? What is our purpose? I'm not sure it's for us to know or to judge. I'm not sure it's for me to know or to judge what my purpose is in this world. But if God has given me dreams, hopes, ideas, inspirations, and they don't let me go, I'm trying to give those over to Him. If He's given me weakness and brokenness and things that just aren't working out, I'm trying to give those over to Him. Because ultimately, the stories in the Bible and the stories that are our lives, they're not our stories. They're God's stories. And as much as He loves my children more than I love my children, God loves you more than anybody else on this earth has ever loved you. And you have an eternal purpose that goes beyond this room, goes beyond this lifetime. I believe that. God bless you all.
Mr. Caldwell, thank you so much for making it north of Highway 7, first of all. It's a border, you know, you're going to have allergies here, there's fields and things, trees, beautiful water you can swim in. You know, I know in Toronto these things don't happen, but they do in Barrie. So, you know, all kidding aside, I think that the way, everyone's going to walk away with something today, and I think the way that you articulated your conversation that Tiny Hearts is having with people is the most compassionate way I've heard that conversation been had. And if that's the target, you're hitting it right on. And I just want to thank you for that purpose, that calling on your life, and probably to your point of your message, thank God for that calling and purpose in your life. So on behalf of the City of Barrie, thank you for coming up, thank you for sharing with us, and I hope you have a wonderful day afterwards. Thank you.